No small talk in this show, is there?
If your capacity to make jokes out of things broke down, would you get depressed? What would happen?
Well, that does happen sometimes. It does break down. And then I go right down and become depressive. You know, I can't come up with it. I can't. It's the turbo engine, you know, it's an extra dimension you get.
Yeah.
It's like models being born with long legs, and suddenly they wake up one day and they're hacked off at the knee. So you feel incapacitated. And it does happen. I have spells of it. And you try to remember, you know, it's like a period. It'll go away. You'll get it back. But when you're in it, it's just hell.
I was a bloody fool.
But why were you a bloody fool?
Because I was naive.
Why were you naive?
Because I am. I mean, why are you taking smoking tablets? Because you can't get yourself off, kick the habit.
Yes, but
we all know what our problems are.
I could bore you for quite a long time about why I smoke, though.
Why am I naive?
Because I sometimes feel...
I think because most enthusiasts are. I think you fall...
Why are you an enthusiast?
Because I'm an energetic enthusiast. That's the way I am.
Why?
I'm an optimist.
Why are you like that?
That is the way I am. But I don't know why I am.
Well, you said it was something to do...
And I'm certainly not just to please you again, as in the beginning of this program, suddenly going to become a cynic who conforms so totally that I become Britain's biggest bore. I am by nature an enthusiast.
Do you think I was suggesting...
Let me finish, Oliver.
Do you think I was suggesting
I do. Let me finish. I am by nature an enthusiast. I am by nature someone who wants to change things and do real things in life. And when the petty and the little belittlers go on decrying my feeble achievements, and many of them are feeble, I feel very sorry for them, because they're not getting up and achieving something themselves. And I won't go back and suddenly become a cynic myself, or become a belittler myself, start running everybody else down to prove that I really was in the right. I was naive, I made a mistake, I'm trying by hard work to get back, and none of your psychological discussion on Channel 4 will change that. That is the way I am.
Clarissa reached over, unzipped his Levi's, and they went to work. Even though he was somewhat shell-shocked that he was sticking it to Clarissa Browning, the Clarissa Browning, who would believe it? When they were finished, he said briskly, "Now we'll both be able to concentrate and make an excellent film. Just know your lines backwards. Listen to our admirable director and become the character you're playing. Live the role. I'll see you on the set, darling." And just like that, he was dismissed.
Now, a lady friend of mine who's about your age, who's a great fan of your work, has this one criticism, and it is that she does not believe, and she's, I imagine, speaking from experience, that it's very easy at all for women to get a lot of pleasure from that sort of sexual encounter.
Oh, my goodness, that's such nonsense. I mean, I think that men have created this image of women. You know, there's a club in Los Angeles called Chippendales where they have male strippers. I mean, you cannot get into this place. They are queuing round the block because men have always said that women don't want to see naked ladies.
Oh, well, that's a slightly different point, though, but actually going to bed with a man on a one-night stand basis who you don't know very well, isn't it rather difficult for the woman to get a lot out of that?
No, but the point I'm trying to make to you is the fact that men have always said this. They've always said women don't want to have one-night stands, they don't want to look at naked men,
this is
they
what
don't want to have magazines.
A woman friend of mine says.
Yes, I see your point, but I think that, I think it's very possible. I myself am a happily married woman, but there is life before marriage. And I was a very wild child, and I see no reason why a woman can't experiment just as much as a man, and maybe have the same disappointment that a man has, or the same fun that a man has. Every one-night stand is not going to be great. Some of them are dreadful, and you wake up in the morning and think to yourself, why did I do that? But women are just as capable of doing it as men, and I'm not advocating that they should today because of the disease that's around.
No, but I'm sorry to press you on this point, but it is a fairly anatomical problem, according to my friend. That is, that if the man can get his orgasm very quickly and very simply, it's not so easy for the woman to do that unless the man helps a great deal.
Well, I'm thrilled that your friend likes my books, but I think she might have led a rather sheltered life.
I see. Would you care to cast your mind back to when you were a teenager, when you had these experiences?
I never said I had these experiences. I said that I know women who are quite capable of not only having a one-night stand, but of having a quickie in the afternoon. But they do it not as much as men.
The point I'm trying to get at is with strangers.
Well, what about the Duchess of Bedford? Did you ever read her book? She said, the best sex I ever had was when a man came to the wrong room in the hotel, knocked on the door, and I kept him there for 2 days.
Yes. So But do you think that it's possible for women to train men, even strangers, to give them pleasure in that sort of short time?
I think that would be very sad if you had to train anybody. I mean, I think sex happens between two people. It's either great or it's not great, or it's mediocre or whatever. But it's not something you can generalize about.
But I mean, one of the problems I have also with sex in your book, personally, I find, is that it is very mechanical, and you keep on talking about people being good at sex. Now, do you really think that there are just people who are good at sex and people who are bad at sex, or that the sex is only as good as the relationship you're in?
I think that the sex depends on the relationship you're in, yeah. I mean, I think some of the sex in my books is incredibly funny. The scene with Howard Solomon and the hooker in Las Vegas in Hollywood Husbands is hilarious, where she pulls off his hairpiece, waves it in the air, and says something that I'm not going to repeat on television. I like to put humor into my books. But writing about sex, you know, if you want to think about male writers act more like gynecologists than writers. And what I try to do is I try to create sexual situations that are perhaps more real, that are a turn on as opposed to a turn off.
But it's still true, I think, that time and again you refer to people being good at sex in the books, and regardless of the relationship they're in.
What do I say? Read me a line.
Well,
jog my memory.
I'm thinking of Sylvia Anderson's boyfriend.
Oh, well, he had to be good at sex. She's addicted to sex.
No, okay, what is being good at sex?
Well, don't you know?
No. No, I'm a virgin.
I mean, you're a virgin, okay? In your left ear, you're a virgin. Let me see. I would say that it depends on the character again. It depends if you're a male prostitute. You are obviously going to have to please the woman who's going to pick you up. It depends. I mean, again, you're in a bedroom with two people. Every person is different. Every person's idea of what is good sex and what is not good sex is different.
So being good at sex is working out what the other person wants?
Yes. That's an excellent answer. I wish I'd said that.
The horrible question was when people would always say, what do you do? Or how old are you, you know? And so I had to lie, you know, and I hate lying.
What did you used to say?
I used to say that I was 17 and that I studied, you know, at school and that, and, you know, that was bad enough saying that. So I think when you start off lying in a conversation, you know, with someone, it puts you on edge for the rest of the conversation, you know.
Do you think it was sort of true in a way, that you were 17 in a way?
Mm.
And so
I felt it, you know, I thought I was really. I didn't ever think about being as young as I was.
But now that you're 17, you realise you weren't.
And that I was 13, you know, or whatever age I was. So, and it does catch up with you.
Amongst boxers, is there a kind of attitude to being male and being a man that's different from the rest of the community? For example, how would you feel if one of your sons was homosexual?
I mean, I wouldn't like that. Give me a bad name. No, I wouldn't like that, man. I couldn't live with that one. I couldn't live with it.
So what would you do?
I don't know. I hope to God not.
Yes, that men could be disposable to me because there's so many of them and I'm powerful and I could get rid of them willy-nilly. I suppose maybe I could. I mean, I've heard some people are like that. I'm not.
I'm not saying you'd use them as disposable things, but it's just that it must colour the relationship. Think of it from the man's point of view. A man who goes out with you
Yes.
is in quite a vulnerable position in a way. He's going to feel
Vulnerable. That explains it all. I knew I was doing something wrong.
I had a childhood of, an adolescence at least, of almost uniform disaster from my parents' point of view. I was an appalling teenager. I mean, I loved it. I mean, I found adolescence to be a splendid time.
What appalling things did you do? I think I read somewhere that you did shoplifting. That was one thing.
Yes, well, shoplifting and, we have to face it, children. It leads on to wicked things. Because shoplifting culminated, ultimately, in me ending up inside a prison for a month or so.
A prison?
Yes, I have lived, young man, I have lived. And eventually I went to a college for 2 years, to do A-levels. And come the day of the exams, I skipped off to London after this 2 years and found myself wandering the streets of London until eventually I went into a public house and had a snifter. And it was rather chilly, so I took a coat from off the rack, wandered around the streets. This coat, unfortunately, contained a wallet with plastic inside it. And for about a month, I went, I think the only word is apeshit, all around Britain.
What did you do?
I just stayed at hotels, some very smart ones indeed, and bought clothes and wandered around seeing school friends where possible. Eventually, ending up, I'd sort of arranged to meet someone at some vast rock festival that was going on near Swindon. It had been moved from Salisbury Plain to somewhere near Swindon. It never actually happened. It was, this is the era when people sort of shifted around like herds of wildebeest looking for rock festivals. It never occurred. But at the Wiltshire Hotel in Swindon, an eagle-eyed receptionist thought that I looked a bit young. I was 17, just turned 18, in fact. And sort of just rang up and checked the card number. And when I got back to the hotel one day, there were a couple of detectives awaiting me.
Was meeting your parents a horrendous moment at that time?
Yes, it was. I mean, they were absolutely angelic. It was extraordinary. I mean, not in the least bit cross, obviously upset, but then I was upset too. But they were also very keen that I shouldn't worry.
I mean, were you actually...
I tell you what made me cry. It was really one of the most moving things that's ever happened to me. I'm a great sort of doer of the old Times crossword. I don't read the Times, incidentally, kids, and I wouldn't recommend it. It's a Murdoch paper and it's extremely unpleasant. But it does do a fairly good crossword. That seems to have deteriorated recently. So I just sort of love doing the crossword. And my mother had come down from Norfolk and she poked through the bar of the little visiting talking hatch a sort of wodge of crosswords cut out from Timeses going back about 3 months, and that just sort of, the fact she'd snipped them all out like that, shoved them together in a paperclip and just sort of pushed them over for me to keep me busy in prison. I just thought, I mean, that was a mother,
That showed that she still...
Yeah, absolutely.
She still believed in you, whatever you did.
Yes, that's right. And it was very sort of typically thoughtful. So yes, that was the sort of worst moment, but also in a strange sort of way the best.
And that was when you cried at that point.
Yeah.
And the tears were what? Tears of remorse, do you think, or tears at the pitifulness of your circumstance?
No, not of the pitifulness of my circumstance. I suppose it was just a recognition of parental love, if you like. That I'd known it had always been there, but I'd sort of found it all so difficult and gone away. And it was just such a splendid gesture, such a sort of, like a mother hen folding wings around you when you've been low and stupid for the last 3 months or something. It's good to know there is a warm place to come home to. And it was that. No, I never felt, I have to be perfectly honest and say that having been at an English public school, there was nothing wrong with prison at all. As I experienced, it was really rather good fun. I met some very nice people, started teaching someone to read, played a bit of piano for the chapel on Sundays. And I had a very merry time. Wasn't raped in the showers by Mr. Big.
Do you think, I thought, just in the thinking I was doing before the interview, that it might be that you're going to say would be emotional dependency and its consequences. That is, of being nailed down in a relationship where you can't escape.
Well, that's certainly true. That's certainly true. Loss of self-control, I suppose, might sum it up well. I have a horror of becoming an alcoholic. I don't think I'm anywhere close, by the way, but there are all kinds of dependencies that I dislike, and alcohol is one of them. I don't know why. I mean, when I see alcoholics, it always really depresses me more than I can say. I mean, I'd rather be a drug addict than it's terrible. Don't become drug addicts, children, please. But alcohol does disturb me because of the loss of control that goes with it. I don't mind being addicted to cigarettes because it doesn't seem to affect my behaviour. But being addicted to alcohol strikes me as being ghastly. And similarly, I've been celibate, I suppose, for about 5 or 6 years.
This is really true, is it?
Oh, yes. And I suppose it comes down to a kind of fear of having someone depending on me, really. And, to some extent, depending on someone else.
surely you must have fantasies. Do you? I mean, you have some kind of fantasy life, surely.
Oh yes, yes. Oh, good Lord! I mean, there's nothing. I mean, I'm not asexual, and I have. But for me, you see, masturbation has always been a great art, if you like.
Yes.
As Woody Allen said, it's the only time you get to make love with someone you really admire. So you could say it's actually I'm so obsessed with myself and think so highly of myself that nobody else will do.
Was it a deliberate decision to be celibate? Did you consciously say to yourself, "I'm now going to be celibate"?
Almost. I mean, I didn't say it quite to myself, but I was sort of aware that I wasn't going to look for a partner. And of course, the longer it goes, the easier it becomes, because the more difficult it becomes to break, as it were.
In your teenage years, I think I read somewhere that your description of your first sexual experience, but you were sexually active in those days, were you?
Oh, well, yes. I also think perhaps that's the reason I'm celibate, is because I had such a crammed sex life in my teenage. I just did everything in my teenage, and I was sitting back and slightly breathless, and having got off the carousel, as it were. Yes, I had a fairly full teenage.
I mean, the other thing that obviously would come to a shrink's mind would be, what about men? I mean, you went to a public school, and I know that there's a lot of homosexuality in public school.
Yes, well, I think, I was probably certainly mostly gay up to the age of about 22, I would think.
Right.
More than straight. Partly because of school.
Actively
I suppose.
so.
Yeah, yes, very actively so. I should say 90% gay.
Because it's lucky you became celibate when you did.
Yes, I suppose that's right. Though I don't think, I feel whatever politically, one shouldn't try and suggest somehow that being gay is now a dangerous and appalling thing to be. But no, yes.
But before
yes,
everyone
right.
realised it, you might have been. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, if I'd been sort of doing the rounds of clubs and things, which I've never particularly liked. But I sort of think. Sometimes people say, "Are you gay?" because they sort of detect a faint kind of campery in the frisky persona, the tweedy, fluffy persona. Yeah. And I try very honestly to answer, and I think that the answer is no, I'm not.
Would you say there's anything comparable in your life to the extreme satisfaction that you must get when you're on a run and you're beating players and you're really in full flow?
Yes.
And what would you say that is?
What is this channel for? I still can't tell you.
I'm feeling better already. Yeah, you're probably right. Anyway, I've got myself all paranoid now. No, I've not, but enough of cancer.